It's time to tune in to Defending the Faith with Frank Harber. Hear the latest about religious liberty.
A win for religious freedom in one of the remaining blockbuster cases facing the U.S. Supreme Court this term.
A legal battle continues for the Little Sisters of the Poor for nearly a decade now.
A street preacher armed with a speaker, a microphone, and a camera strapped to his chest is now banned from the village.
Our founding fathers believed in the separation of church and state, but not for one fleeting moment did they believe in the separation of God and government.
And powerful apologetics. Are you prepared to defend the faith?
I'm convinced unless we trust in God, this nation is finished.
We're facing a new kind of enemy. We're involved in a new kind of warfare, and we need the help of the Spirit of God.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome to another episode of Defending the Faith. I am Frank Harber, and I am your host today. I am the President and Chief Legal Counsel of Defending the Faith Alliance, and we defend the faith. We defend the faith in the legal arena. We do religious liberty cases, and we have several right now across the country. We've won a couple here recently that we're real excited about, but we help defend the faith. And if you get in legal trouble, you can look up and see some of the stuff that we do at defendingthefaith.law and see some of the cases that we're taking on. We also defend the faith in the theological arena. So we are a Christian-based ministry. We do a lot of legal and a lot of law, but we do a lot of theology too. So we've done a lot of stuff helping people defend the faith. In fact, even right now, if you want to sign up for our newsletter and keep up with us, you can get the latest podcast every single week sent to you because we release one a week. But we also have an ebook this month called Objection Overruled, which is answering the top 10 objections to Christianity. So sign up for that and you can find out all about that. And you can hear amazing podcasts like the one today. Now, today we have Ryan Fontenot on the show, and he is the president of R.A.G.E Ministries. I'm going to have him tell you about that in just a second. But this guy, I met him when he was just a teenager in Wascom, Texas. And who knew that he was going to become this great, big, famous evangelist preaching all over the country? Man, this guy is omnipresent. He's everywhere. He's been a pastor in Keller, and now he is just reaching the next generation. Ryan, welcome to the show, and you got to tell us about your family because you got a beautiful family, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. It's kind of crazy to be sitting in the room with you. We were laughing a little bit earlier about when you came to my hometown in Wascom and preached revival and how I still remember, and that's been a couple days ago, still remember one of his messages. And so, so I live just outside of DFW in a little town called Roanoke. You might have heard of it, and married to my wife, Heather. She was actually there. We were high school.
No way.
So yeah, she was there as well. We both are from Wascom. Well, we met in first grade. She moved there in first grade and went to school together our whole life. We've been married. I have 3 kiddos, and they are now, 7th grade, 4th grade, and kindergarten.
Can you remember their names?
I know their names.
Well, I'll just prove it.
Elin, Inley, and True. I got it, man. I got it.
Pictures
now,
of
it's easier.
Your family is so photogenic. Y'all are like a
They
postcard
are.
every
They are,
time,
man.
man. No, all of y'all.
Oh man, I'm kind of
y'all are beautiful.
Y'all
Y'all like supermodels, man.
No, it's been good. So God's been very good to us, man. So I'm honored to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So now, when you lived in Wascom, and your wife now, Wascom's like on the state line.
It is.
So part of it's in Louisiana, part of it's in Texas. Which part did you live in?
It's right there on the state line. I lived in Texas. Yeah. Although I did live in right across the state line when my grandfather passed away, the house over there. Yeah. And so we moved into that house for a season. But we stayed in Wascom, but Texas, man. So yeah. Although my last name is Fontenot, all the people from Louisiana might get mad at me. I do have Louisiana roots, but Texas in my heart.
Yeah.
So
you do have a Cajun name.
I do, man, no doubt.
Okay, so tell us about R.A.G.E Ministries.
Yeah, it's not an anger management ministry, although some people think that. Yeah, but R.A.G.E simply stands for Reaching a Generation Endangered. We believe that the real endangered species, there's all these endangered species lists and stuff, the spotted owl, the killer whale, the Bengal tiger, whatever. Not that those aren't important in their own right, but the real endangered species that we are going after is this next generation, which is now known as Generation Z, and coming up right behind them, Generation Alpha. So yeah, man. So that's our heartbeat, is we say it like this. We say we exist really to, number one, proclaim the good news of Jesus to the next generation. And then secondly, is to prepare them to do the same. We believe the call of the evangelist is not an either or, but a both and.
Wow. So this is going to be a great show. We have about 1,000 pastors that subscribe to this. So probably after some of you hear this, you're going to want to get this guy to come to your town, to your church, to your civic center. Last night, you were, what was that thing that you were preaching in last night? I just have to ask. He just flew in from Houston.
I just flew in.
And he was in some kind of indoor football stadium.
It was an indoor stadium in Mont Belvieu, Texas, kind of Baytown, outside of Houston area, called Fields of Faith. So these take place all over, the country by FCA. And this was just one of the events. It was a indoor arena. I was laughing when I got there. I was like, when I was in high school, only the Dallas Cowboys had something like this. Now there's high schools with all these indoor arenas and stuff. It was incredible. We had, I think, just over 400 kids there. We had right at 50 students, man, across the line of faith last night. So it was an incredible time just to see God move, to worship together, and then to have not only just salvations, but we had a moment of just where Christians were praying over and for and with one another, to watch teenagers literally lay hands on each other and pray for each other. It was just a phenomenal night. So honored to be part of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, for those of us that are listening, so I'm going to tell you, Ryan is someone that's not just going to talk about reaching the next generation. He is doing it. So we all want to listen to you, Ryan. We want to hear what you have to say about reaching this next generation. So I'm just going to give you the floor and let you talk to us.
Yeah. So I think reaching the next generation, if we can talk maybe on a couple of levels, I'd say number one, for the local church. There's a lot of churches who say they want to reach the next generation, but they never do anything to reach the next generation. They're like, yeah, we want young kids or whatever. And so I actually, when I go to churches, sometimes they say, hey, we want your message, the message you've got, whatever it is, that'll help us engage this next generation. And so I always say, man, if you want to reach them, and there's like 7 kind of key things I've seen and research has shown to reach the next generation. But number one, I'd say if we're going to reach the next generation, we've got to invest in this next generation. That means financially. Yes. Churches can't just say, hey, we want to reach them, but not have anything for them, right? So we got to invest in them financially.
So you could probably tell by church budget how much.
Man,
I mean, that tells a story, doesn't it?
Sometimes I tell people this, that statistically, 70+% of anyone who ever says yes to Jesus as Lord of their life does so by their 18th birthday. 70%. And so often we'll follow that up with, so I believe that 70% of your budget ought to be going to reaching the next. Yeah. Now every youth pastor says amen on that one, but and we know that that's not possible. But the truth is that it's one thing to say, hey, we want to reach them, but it's another thing to what's the old secular saying, right? Put your money where your mouth is, right? And so we got to invest in them, financially and spiritually and relationally. So there's this investment. It's going to cost you. I like to say, they're not just going to show up, right? So it's going to cost you. You got to invest in them, which means you got to invite them, right? So I think every student ought to know in your area, whatever area you're in, every high school student, every junior high student, every elementary student, they ought to know at your church, the next generation is not just welcome, but they're wanted. And there's a difference in those two, right? You see signs that everybody's welcome here, right? Well, when you say, hey, we welcome you, but do you want them there? When you alluded to when I pastored a church in Keller, the Lord called me to do a revitalization there. And I was there almost 9 years, this incredible time. I never will forget when I got there was about 80 people left. And as we were there for a couple months, things begin to shift, things begin to grow, and we relaunched a few months later as the Mountain. and as the Mount Church. And I never forget one day at the end of service, one of our older ladies who had been at Mount Gilead for a long time, she comes walking down the center aisle after service. There's tears in her eyes, and she goes, "Pastor Ryan, I need to talk to you." And it's one of those deals. I'm like, "Oh man, like this could go, could go bad. I don't know, man." So, but she grabs my hand and she goes, "Do you hear that?" And it was noisy. It was after church, all this stuff, kids running around, all that. And I was like, I don't know. She goes, "Do you hear all those kids?" And I was like, "Oh, here we go," and tears rolling down her eyes. She goes, "I don't want to ever not hear that sound again." And so she was telling me, hey, I remember when those baby cribs over there were empty. There were no babies in the baby room, and how God was just bringing people. And so I would say, hey, if you want to reach the next generation, that you've got to invest in them. You've got to invite them. And I won't give you all, but I would say this thirdly, here's a real big key, Frank, and this is massive, massive for any church. You've got to involve them, right? Yeah. They don't want to, I like to say, they don't want to just come and sit. Right. This generation wants to be involved, man. These guys and these ladies, man, they can work tech stuff better. Better. My 7th grade daughter, she doesn't own a phone, but she can literally grab my phone and do anything on it. I'm like, how do you even know that? She goes, "Well, it's easy." I'm like, anyway, so I never thought I'd be that guy, but I'm now that guy. And so, but you've got to involve them, find ways to get them involved, right? Statistics show that those who serve stick. And if you want to reach them and help them stick around, you've got to get them involved. And so churches that are doing that the best are ones that are seeing not just them come, but come and stick and serve even post-graduation. So those are a few things I would say for churches right there.
So do you do anything different with young people? I mean, you got a real magnetic personality, but I mean, what do we got to do to attract them?
Yeah, to attract the students, I believe Gen Z, and again, you can check articles and you can talk to Gen Zers. I think they're attracted to authenticity, right? They can smell a fake, a fraud, a phony a mile away. They're like, "Man, I want nothing to do with that." So authenticity in relationship and community. So I'd say authenticity. You got to be real. So don't try to be something you're not. Be who you are. That's what they love. Man, everybody loves that, by the way, right? They love when you're just authentic and you are who you are. And so I would say, number one, be authentic. Number two, build those relationships. Find ways in your community to get into the life of students, whether that's serving at the school, boys and girls club, I don't know, however it is in your community that you can start building those. In other words, get out of your walls, show up at the football games. What does your community rally around? I would say this: if you're a church and your community rallies around something and you're not part of that, you're sending a message whether you want to or not. And so find where they are, be involved. So be authentic, be involved, build those relationships. And I just believe people are drawn to that, right? They're like, hey, they've got something. The cool thing about Generation Z is this. They don't have a lot of spiritual fathers and mothers. And fewer spiritual grandfathers and grandmothers. And so they're looking to an older generation, not to be like them, but to help them grow in their faith. I spend time with 20-year-olds, on a Zoom call and stuff like this. And man, in ministry and some not in ministry, and man, they're just trying to find spiritual fathers and mothers that will raise them up. And so anyway, I would say those are a few things that, and then there's a lot more, but a lot of it has to do with your community, where you are, and being a student of the culture in your community where you are.
Now, you're listening to Ryan Fontenot, and if you don't follow him on social media, we're going to tell you all the different places you can follow him, but this is Ryan Speaks Truth. So I love his social posts and different things, but Ryan, so, I grew up in this America where, there were a lot of churches around, and we said the Pledge of Allegiance in school, and some teachers even prayed in homeroom and stuff.
Right.
But the students today, particularly Generation Alpha, what are they facing that we maybe could be blind to?
Oh, man. Here's the thing. I don't know that we're blind to a lot right now because everybody's just so out. of anything. I mean, so used to, people would kind of hide their sin. They'd try to sneak stuff in, right?
Right.
Well, now it's just blatantly, here's what we're doing. We're not even like, so in a way that's good. In a way, we don't have to go, oh man, I wonder what their agenda is, because they're telling you their agenda from the beginning. And so, especially when it comes to Generation Alpha, we see the infiltration into elementary schools of all of the different agendas that are, why elementary schools? Because they know if I get them when they're that young, we've got them, right?
Yes.
I remember growing up, and MTV first had this statement. It was in Rolling Stone magazine. It said this. It said, here was their quote: "We don't aim for the 13-year-olds. We own the 13-year-olds." And that kind of mindset is like, whoa. And this was 2 decades ago, man. This was 2 decades ago. And so I believe that those who have their propaganda, the agenda, whatever it is, which you handle a lot of, is that, man, they know, man, we've got to get them. And now it's not 13-year-olds, it's 8-year-olds. Man, we can get them by the time they're 8, all the craziness that's going on there. So you asked, what do we need to be aware of? I think we are aware of so much that is out there. So I would just say, it's not that we need to be aware. We just need to be as bold with the truth as they are with their truth. You know what I mean? So if we can, if we would just be bold as believers, if we be bold as followers of Jesus, like we need to pray the prayer that Paul prayed. You know what he asked the church in Ephesus? Pray that I would declare the gospel boldly as I should. Now think about it. This was one of the most bold dudes we've ever known.
Yes.
Right? And so what did when the church said, I don't know if they asked, how can we pray for you? But when he was writing the letter, he said, you don't know how to pray for me? Pray for boldness. And so I just believe we need to pray for boldness over our believers today.
So these kids, I mean, I guess they're, I remember, evolution and stuff being in school and stuff, but these kids today, I mean, some of the stuff that they're facing with, being told that there are multiple genders, even though with science, maybe that we may not find evidence of multiple genders. So, I mean, they've got all this stuff coming at them.
Sure.
Are they confronted? Do you think they understand about absolute truth?
I think they're hungry and starving for absolute truth, whether they know how to articulate that or not. Because when they're encountered with the truth, I mean, we see this, places I go, and one of the things, and I'm not saying this about me, but that youth pastors and leaders say is like, man, I just appreciate you being bold and honest and speaking the truth. That's what came from my Instagram title, which, by the way, it used to be the Ryan Fontenot, and Instagram shut they shut my IG account down like over a year ago, and we went back and forth with them for a couple months, and for violating community guidelines or standards, which they never told me what you violated, which when you read their fine print, they don't have to tell you. They can shut you down for any reason, anytime, whatever they want. So, so we launched a new one. That's where Ryan Speaks Truth came, because here's what Ryan, I love that you speak truth. And I was like, hey, we're going to roll with that. Okay. So I think when they're encountered with truth, they're like, oh man, I knew it. I believe, Frank, you know this, man, it's a spirit of deception over our world right now. Now, I believe every student knows there's only 2 genders. Every one of them know this. They know this, right? Now there's a spirit of deception. There's a pressure. There's a cultural, there's a cultural weight on them to not say that.
Right.
But I'm telling you, when they hear someone say, there really are 2 genders, and let me show you biblically where this comes from, they're like, oh, okay, I see that, and so it's speaking truth, but it's also showing them truth in the Word of God. And what do we know? We know the Word of God does the work of God through the Spirit of God on the people of God. And man, so I do believe there's a culture, this Gen Z, Gen Alpha, man, they're sinking in this sand of whateverness. And they're realizing it's bankrupt. And I believe in another 5 years, they're going to realize how bankrupt it is, because the world is sowing some dangerous seeds right now. And we're going to see this harvest come up, and they're like, this did not come out like I thought it would. This did not turn out well at all. And so I believe sowing the truth of the word into people, man, we know that God's word does not return void. So sow it into them and watch what God does.
Man, 30 years ago, I went to the Southern Baptist Convention.
Yeah.
I still go to them. Love them. But there was this preacher preaching named Adrian Rogers.
Love Dr. Rogers.
Oh, man. So, but he said something that I thought was kind of like just a little preacherism.
Yeah.
He said, the next big battle is a battle over the family. And I just thought, he was just preacherizing, you know, because it's like everybody knows what a husband is and a wife is in a marriage and it's, you know, male and female. I mean, and now I'm like,
he's a prophet.
Man. Oh, like, he nailed it. Wow. And so, you know, sometimes I'm thinking, you know, young people, I mean, I wonder, you know, like, how important is it to like talk about marriage from the Bible perspective, just to show them this is God's future for you. This is his possibility, because I don't think they're hearing that in other circles.
Yeah, a lot of places they're not. Unfortunately, in the churches, a lot of times they're not either. Yeah. So I travel, as you said, full time. I speak in churches and camps and conferences. And a lot of times during camps, I have more than one day with them. I have several days. So you kind of get a chance to build relationships. And so I've made it a point to always try to point somehow to this biblical truth of the family. You know, we just go back to Genesis. It's very simple. We're like, hey, here was God's design. Here's God's desire. Here's what God tells us, right? And it's shocking to me how many students have never heard this. Or maybe they've heard it and they just aren't aware of it, you know? And I'm like, look, because here's what they hear. The Bible doesn't talk about homosexuality. The Bible doesn't talk about a gender. The Bible doesn't talk about marriage. And this is what they're hearing from everyone. The Bible. And we're like, have you read the Bible? Like, you got to get to the first 3 chapters and you're already seen it, right? Yeah. You've seen male, female, marriage. You've seen all of it, right? So I think continuing to point to that, yes, we need to continue to point to that. We need to continue to show that. We need to continue to equip our students for that. And so that's just one of the things that it's not an option anymore, right? I am passionate about teaching students, teaching adults, teaching the church how to share the gospel. But there's another avenue of this, not avenue, but another part of this that is, man, we've got to help them have a cultural apologetic too. Yeah. Like, what does the Bible say about marriage, family, male, female, all of that. And if we're not doing it in the church, I promise you somebody else is doing it somewhere else in a skewed way.
So the Bible says, it is not good for man to be alone.
Right.
Now, he could have spent more time with his friend the raccoon.
Right. Yeah.
Or the fox. That's right. Yeah. And God says, no, what you need is a female. And the Bible gives us this picture about, male and female are made for each other.
That's right.
And it's in there that you find this peace. And so, but if you were to substitute that on young people who never knew any different, they could be looking for love in all the wrong places.
And they are. And which is literally what humanity has always done since the fall. Yeah. We've looked for fulfillment and love and meaning in all the wrong places. And God's saying, it's right here. I've designed this. I kind of know how this thing works. I designed it all, right? And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. Actually, the verse you just mentioned, right? It's not good for man to be alone. I'll talk about, hey, you don't need to walk alone in this life. And I said, but I want you to know that's not what that verse is talking about. And that's when I go into, hey, actually, this is talking about man and woman. This is talking about marriage. This is talking about family. Anyway, and so that was kind of a lead into it. And I just dropped this little nugget of truth, and which leads to conversations afterward and stuff like that. And I would just say that pastors and Christians and leaders, be willing to have the conversation, right? Don't just shut students down when they ask questions. You want them to ask questions. You want to be a place where they can come and go, hey, but what about this? And don't see it as a challenge, but see it as an opportunity to truly pour into them and, what do you say? Disciple them, right? Yeah. So they're being discipled by the world, but this is our opportunity to disciple them. And if you get to a place you don't know, we've always said this, just say you don't know, but I'm going to find out. Yeah. Let's circle back on that. And so I'd say, listen to the questions, man, answer the questions, build that relationships, have the conversation.
Yeah. Cause if we're working at this from a standpoint of, we're trying to tell people, this is what's good. This is what's good for you.
Right.
This is the path to happiness, wholeness, wellness, all this stuff.
Right.
I think they might listen versus the thou shalt.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And there is a time for that.
Yes.
I believe that is in a context of relationship a lot of times. But don't water down the truth, but have the conversation and be willing to answer the questions, because that, I believe, is how Gen Z, Gen Alpha, it was Forbes magazine wrote an article about Gen Z, and they called them the Y generation, WHY with a question mark, the Y generation. And that they said, they are the most question asking. I think we've always asked the question why, but now as much as ever, because of the amount of information, they're like, why? Well, why should I go to church? Pastor, you better have a reason for that. Why should I read my Bible? Why should I believe the Bible? Why do you think there are only two genders? And all of those why questions, we have to be willing to have that conversation. If you want to lose them, just shut them down. But if you want to gain them and you want to reach them, jump into the conversation with them.
Well, we have 2,500 subscribers at the time of this. Most of them are Christian leaders. Right. The kind of people that tune into our show are pretty elite. So I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here. Sure. You go to a lot of churches and you see churches that are reaching kids, and then you see churches that aren't. Outside of spending money, maybe the church doesn't have me. Sure. What can a church do to be that church that reaches kids? What can they do? Because we got a lot of pastors and a lot of youth pastors listening to you today.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of guys will say, well, we don't have the budget to reach them. But when I say investing, budget is part of that, but it's definitely not all of that. There is this thing called relational equity. Mm-hmm. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. I was just last night down in Houston, as we alluded to, and one of my favorite youth pastors on the planet, his name's Danny Phillips. He is one of the best. And here's the reason he's one of the best. Not because he's the best preacher, although he can preach really well. Not because they have the biggest show in town, although they do things with excellence and well. Here's the reason. Because he has relational investment in these students. I watched last night students come up to him afterward, talking, crying, laughing, celebrating, high-fiving, praying, you name it, man. It was the whole gamut of deals, right? And I believe that if you can develop a core team who's like, hey, you know what? We're going to invest in these teenagers. They're going to know they are wanted and welcome here. They are loved. We're going to listen. We're going to listen to their questions, and we're going to help answer their questions. We are here for them. Man, that's going to turn the tide. And it does not take much money to do that, right? Like donuts don't cost that much money. So, that's a small thing. But my point is this, is that no matter whether you're in a small rural town or you're in a metropolitan area like we are here in DFW, hey, relationship trumps it all. Relationships trump it all. And so if you want to make a lasting impact, build the relationships. And so I would say that's key for everyone, whether you're a pastor, a youth pastor, a mom, a dad, whatever, college leader. It's all about relationships. So that's kind of goes back to, we weren't made to walk alone, right?
Yes.
And that's this Generation Z, one of the most the most connected generation we've ever known, the loneliest generation we've ever known. Why? Because they don't have real relationships with people. They have, Insta relationships or Facebook relationships or TikTok relationships. And the truth is that they're longing, even though they may not be able to speak that or help or articulate that properly. They're longing for this. They're longing for real, genuine relationships.
Wow. What do you think about, like trying to reach kids on social media? Some people say, don't do it, don't go, Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, yes. You have another pocket. No. So I here's what I'll say. If you're serious about reaching the next generation, you better get where they are. I have a saying I'll say all the time. If you aren't on their phone, you're not in their life.
Wow.
Why? Because they're on their phone. I don't care. I don't care what you say to me. They're on their phone. The stats are mind blowing. The truth is out. So here's it. A lot of relationships for youth, they're built over texting. And now I want to challenge you. Be smart. Don't be dumb. Like men especially, don't be texting teenage girls late at night. Like that's a bad idea. Be on a group text with them, right? All right. But I'm telling you, if you're not on their phone, TikTok, YouTube, social, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, Snapchat, all that. You don't have to be on it all, but here's the truth. You've got to be somewhere where they can find you. We want to be light in that dark realm. And so that's the reason we're on social media, man, is my prayer is this, and I'll tell students this at camp. Hey, I want you to follow our hashtag on all social media. Our hashtag's We Are R.A.G.E. We are reaching a generation endangered. Because here's what we say, reaching a generation endangered is not a me thing, it's a we thing, right? So I tell students, hey, follow the hashtag so that at night when you're scrolling and every scroll is getting a little dumber and a little darker and you're getting a little further off the path, hopefully, prayerfully, one of our videos will pop up. And the Holy Spirit of God will use that to kind of smack you back into, hey, get back on this right path. So I do leverage social media. It's not for everybody, but I would say this. If you're a youth pastor or a pastor and it's not your deal, find someone in your church that it is their deal and empower them to do it for y'all.
Wow. I hope everybody's getting this because we got gold nuggets flying all over the world, all over the show. And this guest will be back. To talk about stuff. Ryan Fontenot with R.A.G.E. Ministries. And so I'm going to have Ryan close us with any final thought that he wants. And I also want you to tell us how to find you and find your messages and sermons. Every place you are, please tell us where you have things. And he's going to be coming out with a book too, which when you do the book, all right, I want you on my show first. All right. But anyway, I actually listen to almost everything that he does that comes out on social media because it's just worth hearing. So give us our final thoughts and where to find you, because everybody needs to subscribe to Ryan Speaks Truth.
Hey, well, I appreciate that, Frank. Seriously, thank you for having me on here, man. It is an honor. I would just say this. Our entire ministry is based out of Judges 2:10. The verse that says, there grew up a generation after them who knew not the Lord nor what he had done. Wow. Two powerful truths that I believe are as prevalent today as any. There's a generation right in front of us that does not know the Lord. That's why we preach the gospel to them. And number two, they don't know what he's done. And that's why we disciple them and help grow them up. And so I would just say this, man, reaching the next generation is not an option. It's a mandate. Wow. 3,000 churches we know every year close their doors in the U.S. I believe a large part of that is because somewhere along the way, somebody decided we're not going to reach the next generation. We're going to do it our way. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Yeah. They can do whatever they want. And so they end up shutting the doors. But here's the truth. God has given us the hope. Hope has a name. His name is Jesus. And this generation is hungry and starving and longing for hope. Second leading cause of death amongst Gen Z teens is suicide. A hopeless generation. What did Jesus say? I saw this crowd before me. They were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Then what did he say in light of this? So pray, therefore, the Lord of the harvest, to send out laborers into the harvest. That's why one of our goals, actually I have the shirt on right now, is 1 million sent men. By 2030, we want to be part of training 1 million teens to share their faith in everyday life. And so you can find all of our information. Just search the hashtag We Are R.A.G.E. on any social media, our YouTube and all that stuff, R.A.G.E. Ministries. Just go to RAGEministries.com. All the links are there. It's just an honor to be part of it and to see like last night when men just presented the simple gospel and gave a bold challenge to stand up and come if you're ready for Jesus. And out of 400 students sitting on the ground in an indoor arena, 50 of them got up and came to Jesus. And I believe there's a generation longing to be challenged, longing to be reached, looking for hope. And we have that answer. His name is Jesus. So keep pointing people to Jesus.
Well, I've only got one word for this episode, and it's wow. So I want to encourage everyone listening, share this with at least one person. Share it with your youth pastor, your pastor. Share it with your sisters, youth pastor. Please share this because this is a message that is so, so important. Well, we appreciate every one of you tuning in, sharing this episode, and we will see you in the next episode of Defending the Faith.